It's March 2015, and this month we're going to be finishing up our discussion about Jewish festivals by talking about the Jewish feasts in the New Testament and the Book of Mormon. Here's an overview of the calendar. Remember, in spring we have Passover and Pentecost, and then in fall, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Feast of Tabernacles, Hanukkah, and Purim coming in winter. The Feast of Tabernacles is also sometimes referred to as Sukkot. The name references the tabernacles that are set up during the holiday. So on the right here we have a picture of a sukkah. The Sukkot is plural for that, or it's the Feast of Tabernacles. Now this remembers the time when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, and the building was to help remember this temporary dwelling, and also symbolism of their time on earth being a temporary stop in their eternal progression. It also celebrates the harvest. Sometimes it's known as a result as the Feast of Ingathering, so the ingathering of the harvest. If you want to learn more, I recommend reading the Bible Dictionary entry on feasts. Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, is meant to celebrate the story that is found in 1 Maccabees, which itself is found in the Apocrypha. The Hanukkah, the history is that the brother Maccabees take and rededicate the temple in Jerusalem. And the part of the story is that at the time there was only enough oil for one day, but it lasts for 8. Hence there's the 8 candles on the menorah. So in terms of reading about the Jewish feasts in the New Testament, we read about these in several places. So if we read about the festivals that take place in spring, we have the Passover being the timing for Acts chapter 12, as well as most of the last week of Jesus' life. So in particular, as we read about what happens at the Last Supper and in the garden, this is all taking place during the Feast of Passover. Paul refers to Passover several times in his writings as well. Pentecost, Acts chapter 2 is a very prominent occurrence of the celebration in New Testament times. For the Feast of Tabernacles, it is actually referred to simply as the feast in John chapter 7. That's a setting for a great sermon by Jesus. He's in the temple during the Feast of Tabernacles. Zechariah chapter 14 is not obviously in the New Testament, but it refers to the second coming of the Lord, and it talks about the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Dedication is found in John chapter 10, so that's again the setting for Jesus giving one of his sermons, and so you can read more about these different chapters in the New Testament, and hopefully gain a great understanding by understanding the symbolism that is coming with Jesus' teaching, and that he's teaching in the context of these Jewish festivals. In the Book of Mormon, there's no explicit mention of any of these holidays being celebrated. But we know that Jesus died at Passover, so this suggests that 3 Nephi 8 also occurs at Passover. Now, this is, of course, the big condition that this is if they've kept the same calendar and observed the same timing of the months since leaving Jerusalem, which is not implausible, seems actually quite plausible. Further, 3 Nephi chapter 8 verse 5 and then 3 Nephi chapter 2 verse 7 through 8 would then suggest that Jesus was also born on Passover. Here's those verses. It's worth reading them on your own, but it talks about how in 3 Nephi chapter 2 that the Nephites reckon their time from the coming of Christ. So when the sign of the light lasting both a day, a night, and a day again, that's when they started their calendar. Now it says then that Jesus died, or the destruction came to the area in the New World on the 30 and 4th year in the 1st month on the 4th day of the month. Okay, so this is 3 Nephi chapter 8 verse 5. In other words, 33 years after Jesus was born, he was died. And this suggests, in fact, that it was almost to the day. So that if Jesus died on Passover, he was also born on Passover. This is great if this is right, because it provides us another chance to read about the story in 3 Nephi chapter 1 and read it with a new perspective that this is occurring quite possibly during the time when the Nephites would have been, that is, religious Nephites would have been observing the Passover. And that gives greater kind of appreciation and insights of what's happening there. Similarly, of course, this is a case where the Book of Mormon would then increase or affect our understanding of the New Testament. If this is right, that suggests that Jesus was both born at Passover. That affects not only how we interpret stories in the Book of Mormon, but also how we interpret stories of Jesus' birth in the New Testament. So if we can reread Luke chapter 2 and Matthew chapter 2 with a greater appreciation. That Jesus, when he's found in the manger, perhaps to the shepherds who during Passover would have been thinking of the Passover lamb, for them perhaps this would have been a really quite spiritual and moving experience, as it fit with their understanding of the holiday that they would have then been celebrating.